Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary. Today I want to tell you about Kikori Whiskey. Now Kikori Whiskey is one of the more interesting whiskeys that I have reviewed recently, and it's got a lot going on. It's made in Japan, it's brought to the US, distributed here, it's made out of rice. Now you might have some interesting questions, but I'm going to get to those in just a minute. First, I wanted to talk to you about specifically this whiskey and what makes it interesting. So one of the things that I love about this channel, and one of the reasons I even started it, was I love to talk about the story behind a brand. And you might have seen this in a couple of my other videos. Jack Daniel's was one of my first, and that has a cool story. Yamazaki has a really cool story to it. Kikori, obviously, it has a cool story to it. So I want to tell you about the story of Visu the woodcutter and the old priest. It's a Japanese folktale, and I'll keep it really short, so don't tune away. But the story goes that there was a woodcutter who worked hard day in and day out, cutting wood and growing rice. One day, a priest came by to ask him why he never prays. Visu responded that if the priest had children and a job, he would not have time to pray either. The priest was angry and warned Visu of the dangers of ignoring the gods and just working. If he didn't change his ways, he'd come back in the next life as a toad, a mouse, or an insect for millions of years. Visu was not a fan of this threat and devoted all of his time to praying. His crop withered and died and his family starved. Visu's wife became upset and pointed to the poor, thin bodies of his children and told him to rise up and do something more useful to his family than praying. Visu became upset, yelled at his wife, and walked out the door. He climbed Mount Fujiyama and spotted a fox, whom he followed for a little while. He eventually stumbled upon two women playing Go. Visu sat and watched them for 300 years, although to him it felt like a summer's afternoon. When he noticed one of the women made a wrong move, he said, "Wrong, most lovely lady," and the women immediately turned into foxes and ran. Visu tried to chase them, but he found his limbs were stiff. His hair and beard were long and his axe handle had disintegrated. He headed down the mountain to his home to find an old woman he didn't recognize. He told her who he was and asked her where his wife and kids were, and she said buried. And if what you're saying is true, so are your grandchildren. The man named Visu had gone up into the mountains 300 years ago. The gods have prolonged your miserable life for having neglected your wife and children. So that story is really meant to elicit a certain tone, a certain feeling and idea that we all just work too damn hard. And I'm right there with you. I mean, I work too freaking much. And I love to be able to sit back at the end of the day with a nice dram. And I appreciate what Kikori has done in giving me something that I personally enjoy. And what they're trying to get across is that they work too hard on this thing, but it's also like their child and they take care of it. You know what I mean? That's what they're trying to, at least that's what I'm taking away from their use of this story as their muse for their whiskey. So let me talk a little bit about what in my mind actually made this interesting enough to do a review on, because I get samples in the mail and I don't cover all of them, but I liked this one and I wanted to cover this because I thought it was interesting. So this is made of 100% rice. Now you might have not have even known that you can do that, because in the United States we usually deal with barley or wheat or rye or corn. Those are our main cereal grains that we deal with, but you don't really ever think of corn as a cereal grain, and I know I certainly don't, but it totally is, So in Japan, they actually can't bottle this and sell it as whiskey because their rules are different than ours. So they ship it over to Los Angeles and then they actually distribute it from there, and it can count as a whiskey. Now, the United States has some strange laws, or I should more say they're very lax, in that one of our rules literally says something to the effect of the liquid has to have some characteristics of what you would typically consider associated with whiskey. It's like, okay. So in this case, they've utilized that to call this whiskey, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. So let's go into the nosing and the tasting here. While I'm pouring, I will actually also say that everything about this whiskey is made in Japan. They get the rice from rice paddy, they get the water from the, I'm probably gonna say it wrong, the Iwasi River. And they even distill it and everything in Japan. So it's basically a Japanese whiskey. All right, let's go ahead and give this a nose. So one of the first things that I picked out when I was nosing this for the first time was melon. And I couldn't really put my finger on whether I thought it was cantaloupe or honeydew. But one way or, and I know that those two totally smell different. I just couldn't quite remember exactly which one smelled like which. Either way, melon is the forefront for me on this. You also have some like kind of almondy and green apple. So in general, light and fruity. So let's go ahead and taste. Cheers. All right, so the taste follows suit with the nose, and melon comes across once again. It's the same thing that you're smelling is what you're tasting in there, which is just really interesting. You don't get that a lot. Now, one of my viewers, his name's Barry, he actually kind of gave me this tasting note that he got, and I loved it. I totally picked it up, and I thought it was great. Almond. But not just almond. He said it was like the toasted almond ice creams that you get. Like if you think about the trifecta, you've got the chocolate eclair, the strawberry shortcake, and the toasted almond. You didn't always see the toasted almond as much, but he did share that bit of nostalgia with me that was something, as soon as he tasted it, he thought of that, and that was what he got. I loved it. So, once again, you get the melon, you get some almond, you got lightness, fruitiness, and although there is a little bit in the back, a little bit of graininess that you get with maybe like a lower rye, high bourbon, something a little bit less refined in there. Think like Redemption Rye, something like that. Anyway, so I got to thinking, what is the purpose of this whiskey? What is this whiskey trying to be for? Because it is different. You know, why would I tell you to buy this over a bourbon or over a rye or over a scotch? You know, why would I tell you to buy this? And my thought immediately went to where I think I would want to drink this. So I have a deck right over there, and some of you have seen my live stream, and I did like one of them on a deck. Earlier today, I went on that deck, I sat on the couch, I poured this, I actually put a whiskey stone in it, also once again Barry's suggestion, and chilling this whiskey, sitting in 90-degree heat, just chilling on the couch and sipping on this whiskey was awesome. Now, it could have had something to do with the fact that my kids were out of the house and I had, an hour to myself, but it was relaxing, it was nice, and I loved it. And that's what this whiskey is for me. This is a summer dram that's actually, I've had this for a little while, and I've suspected that would be the case. And I even told the company, I said, I'm not gonna do this review until like July, because I think this is gonna go perfect in the middle of the summer, and I was right. So let me just finish with saying this is a $50 whiskey. But for $50, what you're getting is essentially a Japanese whiskey. Now, don't go into it thinking that you're getting a Yamazaki or anything else like that, but you are getting a Japanese whiskey for the price of an American whiskey. So keep that in mind. Anyway, make up your own mind on this one. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So have a great rest of your night, and thank you for joining me here on the Whiskey Dictionary. Cheers.